The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They say, oh, there's parallels to Christianity in that book. And then people read it and they're questioning their faith and how they practice and what does it mean and things like that. So I think that literature gives you this avenue to explore those higher questions without actually making a decision or without making a judgment.
So with the world building, incorporating that in your novels, like world building, from what I've read or researched, it's not just about physical geography. It's about your mental and spiritual state and the influence of how beings are reborn, right? And their experiences in the realm that they inhabit.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, how do you incorporate or highlight the physical geography, the mental and spiritual states in your novels? How do you get that balance and keep the storytelling moving and the audience intrigued? How do you develop the characters so that they're balanced to reflect those elements of world building?
Okay, so are you asking about setting or are you asking about character?
Yes. If we could break it down, setting, for example, and then bringing it to Buddhist cosmology.
Okay, so for setting, with the first book that I'm looking at, we're following the journey of Nara Simha, who is a immortal. The book actually starts in an immortal plane. This is where you have the creation of the universe, you have the Garden of Eden is created, but then somehow Adam and Eve are expelled from that Garden of Eden. In prehistory, for Buddhist cosmology and for Hindu mythology, there's this understanding that there are worlds that are created, they last for eons and kalpas, and they might get destroyed, but the universe is constantly expanding. With this first story, I actually start in an immortal world that was built for asuras specifically. And the reason I start there is because the story itself starts with, oh, all of these people are asuras. They're somehow some sort of superhuman being. So the way that I bring the setting in is that I don't want it to be Earth. And so if you're in a godlike heaven, maybe you don't have bugs. Maybe you don't have rain. Maybe you don't have the things like germs or decomposition happening. It's subtly introduced in this book where they are in this world that is not affected, or I don't know, you could say it's a very sterile universe.
Okay.
So when Simha eventually travels to the human realm, all of a sudden he encounters all of the sense. Actually, we were talking about senses, right? So this is a sense realm, but it doesn't have all of the senses because you don't have as many tastes or smells or all of these things, giving it that. It's a heaven realm. We don't have smelly smells. But you suddenly come to the earth realm and you can smell the manure in the So living in the human realm, what we're talking about is now you're in a realm that was made for humans, and humans are in charge of free will. We overlap with some of the hell worlds. And when I say hell worlds, I'm talking about the animal world and the hungry ghosts and things like that. And so, yeah, when you get into the human realm, all of a sudden your senses, everything just explodes. Right. And if you're a supernatural type being, maybe you have a long life, you're able to experience the human realm on a different level than humans do, because death doesn't affect you, though you witness it.
Right.
Right. So then we get into character. How do you build the character? Well, here's a character who has never really had a personal connection, has had a protective instinct from the beginning where, you know, he has saved people from being enslaved. He has killed a king that was a tyrant. He has befriended at this stage a few humans who he felt a connection with. But he is suddenly in this world where he doesn't know anyone. There's no one alive who knows him. And the gods themselves are afraid of him because he's this powerful demon slaying type of being. And so that contributes to his character of being this kind of confident, someone who should know his way around life and the world, but who is absolutely new to a new setting and doesn't have any kind of familial connections. And that's where the second half of that book begins.
Okay. So as a new being in this new world on Earth, is he a human, or has he progressed, been reborn at a higher level because he had done all these previous things that were good?
So this is where it's complicated, because he did kill somebody, even though he rescued people. So the way that karma affects people is it affects you directly and it affects you indirectly. It can affect you in the next life. It can affect you in this life. Because he's an immortal being, he'll probably have personal karma with people he meets along the way who have been reborn. But ultimately, he killed somebody. There has to be some sort of a devolution for having destroyed life. He saved people, so there has to be some sort of evolution for having saved lives. The balance there is that when he arrives in the human world, he's actually deified by the humans, because anyone who survived and over generations, and even to this day, Nara Simha is worshipped as a god. He is seen as an avatar of Vishnu. And so he has that reputation of being a fierce protecting god. And he has all of that because he saved these people. He rescued Prahlada from, Prince Prahlada is the prince in question, but he rescued him from his father. And then he defeated a whole pile of demons. So he has this deification to him. At the same time, he has devolved to a certain degree in that he goes from being a lion-headed man to being a man who can transform between man and lion.
Oh, interesting.
That in the book that has nothing to do with Nara Simha, the god, and this is where I completely deviate from Hindu mythology.
Right. So do your characters, do you have a balance or someone representing, a being representing the formless realm, the form realm, and the desire pleasure realm, the three realms?
I do, kind of. So there are demons that are featured, and they tend to be from hell, but they are thoroughly embedded in these desire realms because they are full of desire in terms of wanting more. There are political leaders. So, for example, the tyrant king is someone who is not unlike certain tyrant kings of present day, who have a lot and are surrounded by other people who support their efforts, and they're just take. They have no concept of giving. They have no concept of it's if I can't rule the world, I'd rather destroy it. And there is this type of character development. There are characters who I introduced based on, I don't even know if I should say this, based on experience through work, where you have the hard workers who are just trying to go along with the tyrant, the people who don't disagree, but have somehow, they're just maintaining the course because they're just trying to survive the experience and survive it unscathed with themselves. There's a certain selfishness there. I kind of forget the question.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I like that. I like that you've incorporated real life experiences, not just what's going on, what people can relate to while reading this. It's not totally a religious,
well, it's
not too religion. You know what I mean?
None of it is religious, to be honest. Like, all I do is I take the milestones from what is told in the religious stories and to show the holika burning in a fire. This is Prahlada's aunt. I do show Nara Simha destroying the king in the way that you would see lots of pictures and imagery today. I do keep true to that part of the story. Where I deviate is that in the Buddhist cosmology, people are constantly evolving. They're evolving or devolving. They're going up or down on the ladder. And this is where Singha can be seen as a god, but at the same time, he is conflicted between being a man and an animal. He's connected to both the animal side of things and the man side of things. He has to come to terms with, what does that mean? Being animal means that a lot of his fate is predetermined in a way, whereas being a man means that he can make those choices for himself. And this is where, when you get into a lot of the stories of gods and goddesses, that they are fallible, they make mistakes, they can lose their temper. Nara Simha is known for having a very hot temper and for needing to be cooled down by other gods. Somehow that's why he's feared, right? He has this kind of elemental energy around him. But then the gods that come later are a little bit more refined. They're a little bit more human, or more, maybe this is a discussion for another day, but there's, especially in Sri Lanka, there's a history of deifying people in history. And so after that person has died, there's a certain level of ancestor worship, or seeing that person as a god and then being able to ask that person for favors or blessings or curses. And there is this thriving practice of that. And I think that that's a folkloric, that is common across the world. But in Sri Lanka, they've actually studied it and shown that a lot of the deified beings, they kind of become deities after death because of their actions. And because they have a gray level of good and bad, they are remembered in the collective consciousness. They haven't become enlightened and gone off to heaven and not come back. They're still part of the universe. They're still part of the world we're living in. They're still interacting in this world, is the idea.
Right.
And because they're interacting, that's why humans will continue remembering them. And then as stories and folklore and storytelling happens, they become adapted or adapt into the cultural trends or societal trends of the era. And so this is how you see Nara Simha and the Buddha and 10 different deities being avatars of Vishnu, because Vishnu came later.
Okay.
Vishnu came later, but the prevailing thought is that energy, that even Christ is an avatar of Vishnu. And so the pervading thought is that this super universal energy is all the same, one and the same. And it comes to Earth in different ways over different eras. And then all of those become avatars of that energy. And that is Vishnu. And so I hope I'm not insulting anyone of the Hindu background. I know for a fact that as a Sri Lankan Buddhist, I've gone to temples and I have worshipped, and I have incredible respect even for Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all of the religions. But there is this kind of pervasive feeling that God exists, and it takes the form. So to give you a closer to today's timeline example, if you take Gandhi or Mother Teresa, or people who have more recently passed, who have been essentially given sainthood or given great respect after their passing, and to the point where someone's going to go and put flowers or light a candle in front of their image, or have their image in their little Buddha house or in their little shrine room. And that is us continuing that tradition, right? And so eventually even they will become larger than life personalities as generations go.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how that you can see there are commonalities amongst the religions, and I could appreciate that in the sense continuing on. Let's say you're praying as a Christian, praying to saints and asking for guidance and help along your journey as well. And so, yeah, that's an interesting connection.